It, I kind of had to wake up a little earlier than usual, so, but I'll
Right there
snap
with you.
out of it.
Very good. Dariel, welcome. Give it a couple more minutes and then we'll get things on their way. Oh, Julia from Brazil's here. Breakfast with coffee and oatmeal and fresh fruit. That is absolutely right. I think it's really interesting to we talk about these things so intellectually, and then we forget that half the time we're like on these Zoom chats, trying to get a bite or have a drink. It's just like food is such a secondary thing, even though it's so primary. And so it's fun to kind of see where everyone's coming from in the world, what you're using to sustain yourself. And so thanks for sharing that. Well, I think we'll get things started off here. Everyone, welcome, and thank you so much for joining this morning for our second Faith and Food Dialogue. This is number 2 out of 5 that we are hosting to contribute to the UN's Food System Summit. Today's dialogue is titled Healing the Earth and Healing Our Body, and it focuses on the connection between human and planetary health. Just a quick word on the Food System Summit is being held to crowdsource solutions from around the world on how to transform our food systems to be more healthy, accessible, sustainable, and equitable. For these dialogues that we are organizing, they're being hosted by a coalition of faith-based organizations, which include Bumi Global, the Interfaith Public Health Network, the Islamic Medical Association of North America, the Parliament of the World's Religions, the Buddhist Tzu Chi Alliance, and the World Evangelical Alliance, the Buddhist Tzu Chi Foundation. And of course, the Center for Earth Ethics. My name's Andrew Schwartz. I'm the Director of Sustainability and Global Affairs at the center, and it's my real pleasure to be playing host of the convener for this dialogue. And for these dialogues, what we're doing and why we're doing 5 of them, there are 5 action tracks that the UN has designated as critical areas that we need to get right to transform our food systems. This is action track 2 is looking at our patterns of consumption and how we curtail those. And so for us, rather than looking at one single action track, we're trying to take a bird's eye view and looking at how faith, our traditions, our spirituality, and our cultures inform how we interact with food, how we interact with the land, and how we interact with each other, and how that, and for this specific case, contributes to good and poor health, both for humanity, but also for the natural world. We've intentionally created these dialogues to include multiple stakeholders who represent faith, of course, but also health and science and industry, representatives from NGOs, all who are working on these issues from their own localities and positions. And since there's no single solution to the problem we are facing, and there's no simple formula, because the world is a diverse place and it's informed by religion and culture and tradition, we want to make sure that that perspective and that voice is coming in to any solution that we create to the problems that we are facing. And so we want to understand how faith not only can contribute to the solutions that we need to have, and how we need to transform the way that we eat and interact with one another. And so I could say more, but I would much rather introduce our esteemed panelists who are here to share with us. First, I want to introduce Mona Palaka, who is a senior fellow for original caretaker at the Center for Earth Ethics. She is also the founder of the Turtle Island Project. Olav Kjorben, who is the senior director of strategy for Eat Forum, which is based in Norway, and is also representing Action Track 2. And just a quick note of gratitude to you, Olav, for all your help throughout this process. I want to introduce Reverend Dariel Harris, who is pastor at the Newborn Community Faith Church in Baltimore and a founding member of the Black Food Security Network. And I also think, Dariel, that you just defended your dissertation this last week. I hope all that went well. And are you doctor now?
I did. They sent an announcement out this morning announcing me officially as Dr. Dariel Harris.
We've got Reverend Dr. Dariel Harris joining us today. This is a big deal. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And then we've got Najat Mohammed. She's the country director for Global One Kenya. And Global One is a Muslim women-led international development NGO that is looking to create sustainable solutions in local communities. And Dr. Mingnan Lin, who is the vice superintendent of the Dalian Suchi Hospital, the Suchi Medical Foundation in Taiwan. And we've got Bibi Laluz Gonzalez. She is serving as our moderator. She's an international political economist who merges food security, climate sustainability, and human rights. She is also the founder of Eat Better Waik in Guatemala. Bibi, thank you so much, and over to you.
Thank you so much, Andrew, and hi everyone who is joining. I'd love to get the chance to also congratulate all the speakers here who have gone. They have different sort of celebrations, and today is twice as special because we have, well, here Reverend Dariel, who just got his amazing news, and congratulations, and also Eid Mubarak, Najat, and happy Eid, and it's so great to have you here today on this such special day, and for the audience as well. I also want to highlight that last week, Dr. Ming with the Tzu Chi were celebrating their anniversary, and also Buddha Day commemoration of what Buddha Day is this year. And so glad to have Olaf here. I've been looking at also on the podcast and different writings that you've been doing. And so glad to see Mona here, who is our wonderful grandmother in this session. And thank you all for joining. Well, as Andrew said, my name is Bibi Laluz, those are my three names, and my last name is Gonzalez. And hope to enlighten you in some way during this moderation of an action track that I believe, this is my perspective, is the one that is most approachable to each and every one of us. It is not a broad topic, but it's not either something abstract, but it's like our day-to-day, because we are all consumers, because we might not all be producers, but every human being are consumers because we have the right to food, to eat, and especially to have that right to having an option of being nutritious at all times. So this action track is to shift to sustainable consumption patterns, and really getting to the topic of shifting our mindset. How do we shift into being healthier, affordable, and accessible foods? So Andrew already did a presentation, and on the chat, I would also love, for example, for you to know the origin of the food that you're eating or drinking. For example, we have on the chat people saying, oh, I'm drinking coffee and this fruit and that. It would be so great for you to interact and tell us where you bought it from, but then look a little bit further back where it comes from. Who are the ones in which country? Who are the ones producing it? And then we can better understand all the cycle and the system of food. So you are super welcome to go in and do that chat over there. If you have any questions, please do so as well, or comments for our panelists. And we have such a distinguished lineup today. And for you to understand also the interaction, I'll be asking two general questions for the panelists that they can answer with their own expertise. And then we'll give out some time as well for them to discuss and ask each other some questions, or build up on what was said throughout the conversation. Then we'll also have a space of questions and answers. We'll be specifically answering your questions. And then we'll do a wrap up and invite you to the following sessions as well. So thank you all for being here. This is the second dialogue of the Faith and Food series. So we're super happy and pumped to have you all here. And how we're going to do this is we'll start off with Dr. Ming, then I'll ask over to Najat, then Olav, then Mona, and then Dariel. And then to see how the flow goes, we'll see how the reverse order is going to be. So I hope you're all excited. If you have any comments before we start from the panelists, I'd love to hear you. How are you feeling?
Excited.
Awesome. Well,
I'm excited as well.
Yeah.
super. Well, me too.
Very excited. I'm so excited to be here, really, to see you all.
Fired up and
Yes.
ready to go.
Huh?
Fired up and ready to go.
All right, let's do that. All right, so general first question, and considering also what I mentioned before, this is a crucial topic that everyone needs to understand and be somehow involved and also connected. So what is great about these dialogues, that it's not only including the same people, but it's open to so many more. So in that way, Dr. Ming, can you, and this is a large question that you can just, do it by chunks, but what in your work and in your life perspective as well, how are your actions promoting healthier consumption? Who are they reaching out to? Why should they be a reference point to the rest of the population? And what narrative, mindset, incentives, and actions should we be using to create these sustainable changes?
Thank you, Bibi. Yeah, it's really my pleasure to be here because I am a physician. I have another role, so I have 3 roles in promoting healthier food consumption. As a physician, the health of the patient is always my major concern. Taiwan is a rapid aging country. I think it is also the same as in the States. Non-communicable diseases such as diabetes, hypertension, chronic heart diseases, and so forth has been leading cause of death in Taiwan. It is for more than 3 decades. And some cancers such as colorectal cancer and breast cancer, these are 2 highest incidence cancer in Taiwan. And then they are related to processed meat and red meat consumption. So I promote plant-based diet in my clinic for the health of patients. And also I deliver speeches in the community for our citizens. This is my action in promoting healthier consumption as a physician. And the other role for me is that I'm a clinical researcher. With my colleagues, we conduct clinical research comparing the health effects of plant-based diet and omnivorous diet. So far, we published 12 scientific papers showing that plant-based diet is better for preventing diabetes, stroke, symptomatic gallstone diseases, gouty arthritis, even depression. We also published a paper comparing the medical expenditure of vegetarian and omnivore. And then vegetarian spend 70% less compared with omnivores. And we try to use evidence to break down the myths in the medical community that consider meat as a better protein source. We also have the chance to share our studies and experience in international conferences. One example is that when we held the 4th Green Hospital Asia Conference in Taiwan, we hosted that conference. Aside from sharing the environmental friendly program in the healthcare sector, we provide delicious vegetarian cuisines throughout the 3-day conference. Many of the participants, especially from foreign countries, did not know that vegetarian dishes could be that tasty. 2 years later, in the fifth Green Hospital Asia conference in Singapore, when Kutepo Hospital held a conference in 2019, they also provide vegetarian dishes only. We think that will become a tradition in Green Hospital Asia conference. This is a clinical researcher's role. And the other role for me is that I'm a volunteer of Subsidies Foundation, which is a Buddhist foundation founded by Master Cheng Yen 55 years ago. I believe in cause and effect. Climate change, extreme weather, unprecedented natural disaster happened mostly due to human behavior. Part of the disruption of the ecosystem is due to the dietary pattern of human. Livestock and fishery industry contributes a lot of greenhouse gas to the atmosphere. Subsidies Foundation emphasizes peaceful and gentle coexistence with the earth since 55 years ago. We implemented those principles in 7 hospitals along Taiwan, 2 universities, kindergarten, elementary school, high school, and even in our TV station. We run more than 9,000 recycling stations in 17 countries, where more than 100,000 volunteers segregate recyclable from non-recyclables. At all these locations, we provide only plant-based diet. So as the 3 role of me, yeah, this is my action, and I think that it can be as a physician and a clinical researcher, and also a volunteer of a Buddhist foundation. I think that is what my daily practice. I think through my efforts, I hope that we can create a change and then to become more environmental friendly.
Thank you, Dr. Ming. And how did people react when it was all plant-based diets? And how do you think your example can be replicated elsewhere of just plant-based? And how can we soothe those reactions in order to be a bit more aware of our health and the planet's health as well?
As you know that for patients with chronic heart disease or diabetes or hypercholesterolemia, that is, they will cause some diseases such as stroke or chronic heart diseases. And then when the patient change their dietary habits, we check their blood regularly, and you can really see the effects of, we call this called non-pharmacological intervention of their diseases. So we can prove that, not only give them the medicine, but also the lifestyle changes, so they can follow, because they want to be healthy. This is for personal health. And for planetary health, and there's a lot of disaster, natural disaster like extreme weather, compared with decades ago, is quite different. Like in Taiwan, we experienced the biggest drought in 50 years. And I think that we all know that it is due to the climate change. So as people suffer from all this extreme weather, and then they will know that it is very important that we change our behavior, especially diet pattern. For personal health.
Yeah, and it's also good to have some like a role model or someone who has gone through it in order to better comprehend. And for the audience, what Dr. Ming also was mentioning is, and the whole point of also the action track too, and our involvement is what the UN still calls it the double burden of malnutrition. I call it the triple burden of malnutrition, because it implies the 2 different forms of undernourishment, then obesity and overweight, and then non-communicable diseases, which as you mentioned, it can be cancer, diabetes, anemia, heart failure, and so much more, that we can a bit play a role in controlling these types of diseases of what we put in our mouth and our decisions, right? And what is available. But there is a coexistence between these disparities. And I want to turn it over to Najat as well to please tell us more how you are bridging these inequalities from your work. So how are your actions promoting a healthier consumption? Why are they important? And how are you using the narrative and the mindset shift in order to do so? And especially women too, right?
Thank you, Bibi, and hi to all. Thank you for being here, and I'm so excited to be with you today. It's an honor, really, for me. And mine is like, it comes from 2 points. One, I am really passionate in creating a just world, and that is for humanity as well as for the mother planet, Mother Earth. So that is in me. And the other one is like I work with this organization called Global One. Global One is a women-led organization focusing on women empowerment through health, water and sanitation, education, as well as agriculture, that is food, creating food security. So we are working in Asia, Africa, and also Middle East. And in Kenya here, we really work with the pastoral communities. Pastoralists usually just, their main source of livelihood is livestock, and they feed on animal food that is quite of high value. Eating vegetables for them is like, you are so poor. So that's why you're eating vegetables. So that is the narrative they come from. So like communities value animal products. If you slaughter an animal and eat meat today, you feel like you have done and you're so proud, and it's like, and milk is their main source of food. Meat and milk are their main source of food. So what we do, we work with these communities to create alternative source of livelihood through farming. And through the farming and agriculture, the farming that we introduce to them is organic farming. So there's very small community, like 5 to 10% of the pastoral communities we work with practice farming, and those who practice farming, they use artificial. They're not producing organic meals nowadays, food. So what we do is, those who are already in the practice, we encourage them to use organic way so that they care for their health as well as the health of the earth. And also those who are only into pastoralism, we encourage them to practice as an alternative source of livelihood, farming. And the farming we introduce to them is organic farming, so that they produce organic food and consume as well, and also sell the surplus to the market. So access to organic food is quite limited currently in also Kenya and in the pastoral areas. So pastoral areas normally get from the other parts of the country their food. So what we do is we train women. Most of our beneficiaries are women, 75%, and girls. So we train girls on how to produce meals organically and why they need to eat organic food, as well as the 25% male-led household. So so far we've reached over 150 household, mostly women-led households. So, and that is the way we are encouraging them. And then we link this to their health. You see, the problem in the area is obesity is a huge issue. And they feel like if the person is obese, they see that this person is so healthy, and it's a source of pride for them. And so, and then people are now prone to chronic diseases, non-communicable diseases. Diabetic is like in every household, almost you get one person who is diabetic. Blood pressure is a big issue in the area. People consume a lot of sugar, artificial food sugar, and animal products. So we relate this. Why are these happening? And you know, usually before the people, pastoral communities feed on this, but they walk a lot. That's a part of exercise for them. So those who in semi-urban and urban areas currently, they use other means. So walking is like you walk when you are poor. If you don't have money, that's why you are walking. So people they ride, they drive, and this. So now we're encouraging them why they need to exercise as well as eat healthy food, and as well as produce healthily while taking care of the Mother Earth as well. So that is what we do, Bibi.
Well, Najat, that is so enlightening, and also to understand how the mindset, right, and perceptions of wealth and being in an okay or good position also relates of how our bodies look. And just a reflection, do you think that people might change the priority of their wealth instead of being, for example, more, let's say, big to the sides, to show off how well they're doing? But do you think there's a change that their health will be the representative of how well they're doing, considering now that we are in the peak point of a health pandemic?
Yeah, like lack of awareness is a major issue, and access to information is also very limited for the communities that we work with. So what we are doing is to create awareness and to link why are people getting sick currently. Why are they how those, and they see, every person who is obese has either diabetic or is suffering from high blood pressure, heart diseases, organ failures, kidney and liver problems. They see nowadays. So it's kind of still, if you gain weight, they say, you're looking good nowadays, you're this, and if you lose, are you sick? What's wrong with you? Are you not eating? Is she poor nowadays, or she's stressed? That's what people think. So now but then it's slowly coming in. And I know if we make more awareness, create more awareness, inform people, link their health, the condition people are suffering from, and the way the body is, hope is there, people change. Yeah.
That is brilliant, Najat. Thank you so much. And for that, there needs to be some sort of strategy to do that.
Yeah, sure.
And for that, I'd love to turn it over to Olaf here, because he is a senior strategist. And just to focus on the strategy part. And sometimes it's difficult to make a plan in order to do this, because people, we all work with people, and we do unexpected things as well. And I'd love to know how in your perspective, how you're doing this. How are you promoting a healthier consumption that comes into practice and doesn't just stay on high level entities? And who are the people that you're involving with? Why do you think this is working? And what would be the incentives to make these changes sustainable or even regenerative?
Well, thanks, Bibi. That's quite a mouthful to grapple with. First, I want to say Eid Mubarak to all our Muslim brothers and sisters around the world. And today is actually also a holiday in the Christian tradition we celebrate here in Norway. It's the day of Ascension, which according to Christian tradition was the day when, after Christ had finished his mission on planet Earth, he returned back to heaven. And it's interesting to read the story in the Bible, because what did he do before he left? He basically prepared a meal for his friends and followers, clearly a sustainable and healthy meal of fish and whole grain bread. and they enjoyed that meal before he disappeared. And what's really striking, is that in all the faith traditions, food is really such an intimate part of the big religious narratives. It's so prevalent that you almost forget about it, and that you almost stopped to see it. And really, what the faith traditions have always helped humanity to do with their grand narratives, explaining, our place on this in the world, is the narrative about how we as people, in terms of our health and well-being, how that is linked with the health and well-being of the larger world, if you wish, the universe. So, the insight that food, health, planet are in fact deeply interlinked. The narratives are very rich in that regard. And in some ways, science have finally caught up with this wisdom. The Eat Lancet Commission's report from 2019 provided the first synthesis science that basically proved in a scientific way the intimate connections between the food we produce and the food we eat, our health and well-being as human beings, and the health and well-being of our planet. What we are trying, therefore, to do now, as we move towards a food system summit, and as we lead the action track 2 on shifting to sustainable consumption patterns, yes, we are trying to generate game-changing solutions to the immense challenge of shifting consumption. Some of these solutions are kind of policy and politically oriented. Others are oriented towards business. Others are oriented towards people as consumers and as citizens. To put on the table the kinds of actions we can all take to make a difference. But underlying all of this are these narratives that kind of make sense of it all, the why something is important. And that is critical because ultimately change really happens. Big societal shifts happen when mindsets shift. And therefore, I believe that the time has really come to for science and faith, the wisdoms of faith traditions, to join hands in shaping the great story of the future that we need in order for people to be motivated to make the changes that are needed in our day-to-day lives, because these stories can help us understand deeply that it matters how food is produced. It matters what kinds of foods we eat. It matters to us. It matters to the planet, and it matters in a very big and deep and existential way. We know now, the science is telling us loud and clear that unless we put in motion fundamental shifts in terms of how we produce and consume food over the coming decade, I'm literally talking about the 2020s. Unless we put those changes in motion, the forces that we are unleashing as humanity on the Earth's big biophysical systems, whether it's a climate or other, the interplay of the web of life with the Earth systems. It will spin out of control, and we won't be able to stop kind of run away changes that will even make continued life and civilization of humanity, a big question mark whether it would be possible for humanity to continue to have a future on this planet. It's so existential. that we have come to a point now where we really have to come together and together, shape the big narrative about humanity's future on this planet, and with food very much at the center of that narrative. And only when we have achieved that can we say that we're anywhere close to mission accomplished when it comes to food, health, and planet.
Thank you, Olav. When you mentioned food at the center of the narrative, and also when you were talking about putting us in motion, I also kind of related a bit of emotion, feeling it, being there. I would love for you to imagine if we're with all these multiple players and we are together to make these changes into words and also in practice. And you mentioned putting food at the center. And we're in a circle, and in the middle there is food. And these foods are the ones that would be representative of this shifting towards these diets and patterns. What food would you include at the center?
Wow, what I think is beyond discussion at this point is that the food future of humanity needs to be plant-rich, and with the great variety of food sources that the plant kingdom has to offer us, from land and from aquatic sources. The current trend is that we are eating more and more of fewer and fewer things. Basically, if this continues, we'll just be eating 5 things. That kind of dominate the global food system. That has to change fundamentally, and we need to make sure that we can, in all parts of the world, basically provide a rich array of plant-sourced foods to humanity. And I'm talking about, of course, the vegetables, the fruits, the nuts, the legumes, the beans, etc. As well as everything that the oceans and the freshwater sources have to offer. That does not mean that from a scientific perspective we should stop eating animal sourced food. There is room for that, absolutely. Although a lot of people will decide for other reasons that they want to eat a vegetarian or a vegan diet. But strictly speaking, from a scientific perspective, we can still enjoy animal sourced foods, but the proportions need to be brought back to sanity. We have to put the brakes on the very worrying trends we see all over the world of increased consumption of meat and animal sourced foods, and that's going to be the big shift that will allow 10 billion people by 2050 to eat a healthy meal, a delicious meal, a nutritious meal, without wrecking the planet.
And perfect. Thank you so much, Olav. And what you mentioned just now, the delicious and the good, because we also eat because we need it, but we also eat the certain things that we like to eat as well. And with that, I so love to turn it over to Mona. When we were discussing in our previous call, you spoke about so many different foods in your diet, specifically in the indigenous communities that you're at. And I love to hear more of how you are promoting these healthier choices, and not so much choices, but is tradition that have come throughout so many years. Are they reaching out just your community, or is it being made available as well elsewhere? And why should they be a reference point in order to do this, to change narratives, to change mindsets, and also work as an incentive? I mean, tangibly, these foods can work as an incentive for improved actions. So Mona, thank you so much, and love to hear what you have to say. Let's open the mic.
Okay.
Thank
I'd just
you.
like to greet each and every one of you and say thank you. Thank you for allowing me to join you today. And I'd just like to also give thanks for the day and all the, what we call the divine creations, the water, the air, the fire, the earth, that make it possible for us to really have this life and to have, you know, what sustains us, this food, this nutrition that we depend on in order to live in this world and to survive. And speaking from my indigenous perspective, I come from, on my mother's side, I come from the Havasupai tribal nation, which is based down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon. And the name Havasupai means the people of the blue water. And on my father's side, I'm Hopi and Tewa, which is Pueblo Nation up in northern Arizona. And if you think about how the geographical difference or similarities of these two distinct different tribes, living down at the bottom of the Grand Canyon is the land base of our community. The village there is 1 mile wide, 3 miles long. And then we have this beautiful water that you see behind me, Havasu Creek, and also a little further down into the canyon is the Colorado River. But our existence, and still today, has been to be able to have our food sources of having gardens within our in our village, and most each family basically has their own little garden that they grow. And one of the things that they do is they, when they have the harvest, they celebrate. They have a big celebration. They grow corn, squash, beans. We have peaches, apricots, pomegranates, all many different our plant foods there, as well as also the wild food, plant foods that we rely on. And the also there's a hunting season when the men go out and they hunt and they bring back the meat of you know, elk or deer meat. Those are usually the main meat sources. Also gathering piñons, pine nuts, and preparing that food in a way that where it's you know, it's fresh, we eat it fresh, but at the same time drying it so that in the wintertime we will have also still have those foods, dry fruit, dry meat, and so we would be able to still eat that way in the wintertime. That's the way I was raised. And so today, there's been many influences, or I guess colonialism has brought much, you know, change. And at the same time, because of the rural isolation of many of these tribal communities, such as the Havasupai, where they still receive their mail by mule train, they call it, on the backs of horses or mules, and then the only way to get there is to hike 8 miles and into the canyon, or to go by horseback. And also today they now have a helicopter that goes down maybe 3 days a week. So access to commercial foods is limited, and the kind of food that is delivered to the little general store that they have there is also limited. And of course, you know, the junk food is also, you know, readily always brought in. And so so this has had an influence also on the eating, you know, how we eat, how the health of the people, and also in keeping you know, our physical fitness has also changed. What's happening now, and what I've worked on, is gardens, bringing in a community, bringing a garden into a school, and engaging the teachers, the biology or science teachers, and making part of their curriculum the gardening. So each class throughout the day would have an opportunity to go out to the garden. What happened was, when I first went there, because at the invitation of one of the staff of the school, when I first went there, there was resistance.
Yeah.
The teacher said they didn't have time. They didn't have time to do this. The principal, he was interested. He also is a farmer himself, and but then the staff, the maintenance staff of the school, told us we don't want to have anything to do with it. The supervisor said, I'm not going to have my men take care of a garden, you know, and so they resisted. But we still came back, and what I did was organize a community meeting, and the community came out, and we talked about gardening and the value of gardening within the culture.
Mm-hmm.
And within the culture, in gardening, in growing their food, there's teachings that go with it. There's values about, you know, proper conduct and how you relate, and all of those things, all those kind of teachings that go, beginning with putting the seed in the ground, you know, or preparing the ground, putting the seed in the ground. And so the community themselves embraced it. And we, when we had, after the community embraced it, the next day when we came back to our meeting, the supervisor of the maintenance crew came in, and he said, I have something to show you. When you get a break, come see it. He told us that. And we were kind of surprised, because before he was very, you know, resistant. And so we took a break and we went out, and here he said he had picked out a place that he and his crew felt would be the best place to put a garden. And they already went, and they had their tractor, and they already tilled the soil. And he said, this is where we can put the garden. And he's
Mhm.
using that word we, which of course was a very, very, yes. So
Yes.
we also had a person who worked with the water flow, and he had done an assessment about how the water would come on the buildings and how it would flow and where it would flow, the pattern of the rain flow.
Mhm.
And so he even figured out how many gallons of water would come off of that roof. And so so we had it set up so that there was going to be a catchment for the water. And then from that, one of the farmers said, I have my tractor, I have the hose for irrigation. We can put in a drip irrigation line, everything. Somebody else said, I have seeds. And the community, within a week, the community all came out and they worked with the students.
So
And
extremely
put in-
participative. I mean, you get involved, everyone, and also shift the mindset, shift the perception, and also change the actions. And with that, I'm gonna go and flow towards Dariel with what you said, Mona, as well, about also the availability and access of the foods that for example, that you grow, and replicate this somewhere else. Reverend Dariel, you speak a lot about the availability of junk food or food that isn't necessarily great for your health, right? And you also mentioned, well, I'll leave it to you to for you to talk about what you work on, but what Mona was saying, how do you make these mindset shifts of choosing something that is being grown in the gardens, and how do you make that available in a presence where in a place where very industrialized foods are available, and also speaking about those marginalized populations that usually tend to be more ill, right? So how are you doing that? Why do more people need to focus on following your steps as well?
Okay. Hi. Well, thanks for having me. Happy to be here to respond to the question. How do we do it? I've been trying to do it by kind of pulling on some of what Olaf said earlier, which is blending scientific information and the faith narratives. And so I've been working on creating curriculums that blend biblical narratives with scientific best practices that encourage people, as a matter of their faith, to live longer, to live full, abundant lives, to increase the amounts of fruits and vegetables that they eat. And, we're going church by church, kind of teaching these lessons. At my church, where I pastor, every week we have something we call the health tip of the week. And so every week, people are getting health information, and it's blended right into the service. We also, my church also started a large farm, the largest farm in Baltimore City. It's called Strength of Love 2 Farm. We started that farm as a way to give employment to people coming home from incarceration, but also as a way to inundate the neighborhood with healthy foods, and to make sure everybody had access. And so everybody's not going to be able to do a farm. And so with the Black Church Food Security Network, we've gone around and encouraged churches to have gardens in their particular churches. And it's been good in that each particular church has lots of individual churches have gardens, and those churches take care of those gardens. Those churches have to learn how to, they have to learn how to plant the seeds, how to nourish the seeds, how to grow, how to prune, when to pluck. And they've invested a lot of time and sweat and energy. And so they're vested in the outcome, and food always tastes better when it was your hands that have nurtured it along the way. And so that's been good. And even before the Black Church Food Security Network did that, the Baltimore Food and Faith Project has done that around multiple religious institutions in the Baltimore region, planting gardens. But all of this work, whether it be planting gardens, having a farm, doing health lessons every week, all of this is still pushing a very large rock uphill. And so what I've been now working on is policies and communicating to policymakers that we're trying to the conditions in which people are living, the readily access they have to food oftentimes are horrible choices. The price point of healthy food is expensive. The price point of unhealthy food is quite cheap. I mean, you can go to $4 will get you, 2,000 calories of awful food, or it can get me, 4 apples. So the 2,000 calories seems a lot more fulfilling than 4 apples. And so, but why is this the case, right? Like if I already know that that fruits and vegetables are healthier than the meat alternatives, if I know that people are likely to eat the food that's around them, then how come there's not more healthy food around them? How come the food that is healthy is so expensive? How come the food that is awful for us is so inexpensive? And it's like we're tempted you walk down the block and every 2 steps you're tempted with another horrible alternative. And so why is this the case? And so there has to be somebody communicating to policymakers and city councils to say, hey, let's stop inundating the most marginalized citizens of our municipality with the worst foods because somebody's making a lot of money off of it. How do we make it so that the healthy options are the more normative option because it's what's available and what makes the most sense.
And how do you do that, Dariel? I'd love to get more into the subsidies part and
yeah. So one of the recommendations is that, okay, we need food subsidies. So in the United States, if you are a large producer of meat products, then you're going to get subsidies, right? No one pays the full price of meat products. The government is going to give you food subsidies, and therefore the price that consumers and customers are going to pay for those meat products are going to be drastically reduced. Now, if I grow vegetables, I don't get those same subsidies. And so if I'm just an everyday consumer and I want calories because I'm hungry and my kids are hungry, it's a much more economical and time-saving choice to choose the salty, processed, heart failure-inducing meats than it is for me to choose an option that is that's healthy. And so one of the policy recommendations is that we start giving incentives and subsidies to people growing foods that are actually life-giving instead of the people who are growing foods that are life-robbing. Another policy suggestion is that there's a lot of alcohol research happening in the United States, and essentially the alcohol research suggests that places with a plethora of alcohol outlets tend to have alcohol-related acts of violence, right? It's almost like a no-brainer, but the research is there, it's very clear. And so now I'm trying to take those same models and put those towards food outlets, right? And so we can demonstrate that places with that are inundated with food outlets that are serving really unhealthy options are proximal to people with the lowest to neighborhoods with the lowest life expectancy and the highest rates of these non-communicable diseases.
Thank you so much, Dariel. And I'll keep continuing and to ask you a question to transition to our for the audience, this is a unique perspective for you to merge faith and food. Reverend Dariel, how do you promote this within your church and your faith? When we were talking, you're preaching something here, and then you go outside, and sometimes it feels like a different world. Perhaps it is meant to be like that, but then how do you think, believers of this religion or these faith can coincide what is you're preaching, but then how you're practicing it? And I really love the part where you said the life-giving and life-robbing, because eventually we're here living and we have a purpose as well in some way. So how do you connect those two?
Yeah, so one of the things that I'm speaking from a Christian lens, right? But I'm assuming that some of these sentiments are applicable to other faiths as well. But I speak from a Christian lens, and so one of the things that we oftentimes try to impress upon our parishioners is that we're asking, God is calling us, and as leaders, we're asking everybody to make decisions that are for the good. Not to make the decision that's easiest, not to make the decision that's most convenient, but to make the decision that is for the good. And so, John 10:10 says that Jesus says, I've come to give life and to give life more abundantly. And so our pursuit is abundant life. And I define abundant life as life that is live to all the full potentials that you're able to live. And frankly, if I have heart disease, it robs away from that, right? If I'm on dialysis and I have to go to dialysis 2-3 times a week, then it prevents me from doing things. If I'm unable to walk up the stairs and play with my children or grandchildren, then it prevents me from living those lives. And so we said, well, is that really what God wants for us? To exchange, the fullness of life for cheeseburgers? And so, these are kind of the faith-based questions that we ask. And then, once you get past that, then we look at, in Genesis 1, God creates men and women, and God tells men and women that they're supposed to eat fruits and vegetables. Like, God blesses them and says, I laid all the plants before you and the fruit-bearing tree with seeds in it. This is supposed to be yours for, and if you read King James Version, it says for meat, or which means for the core of your food. It's supposed to be these fruits and vegetables. And we talk about how, eventually the Bible ordains eating some meats and eventually all meats, but God never recreates the body. And so when the body is created with God, and God is doing it with the intent of saying, fruits and vegetables is how this body is going to be nourished. And it's created with that in mind. And so we want to move back to a model where fruits and vegetables are, the bulk of our calories, which will allow us to be healthier. And science says that as well, right? So it's kind of a merging of the two. Instead of fighting each other all the time, we can blend and say, okay, this is, this is. I
love. Thank you so much, Dariel. I love that you say blend, and for that I want to turn it over to Najat as well. So how does your faith support this purpose as well of being healthy, what we're supposed to be consuming to have a good life, right? With some sort of purpose. And you were talking also about Iman, how that faith, right, connects specifically on this. And I'd love to get that involved. And also the importance of food in religion. I mean, Ramadan has just ended right now with Eid. So really understand the importance of that. And maybe, I don't know, get a sense of what you got to eat today as a way of celebrating that.
Thank you, Bibi. Yeah, really, if you see in my faith really encourages us to eat healthier, and the importance of not wasting food. You know, it says Allah loves those who don't waste. It's clear, you know, and it speaks about taking care of our environment and also our body. It says your body is God-given. So it's a gift from God and you have to take care of it. Yeah. And you have to be fit. And even in the practice of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, we are encouraged to eat in a balanced way, and he encourages us to eat more fruits, vegetables than animal product. Even in the Quran, you see the Quran speaks less of animal food eating consumption, but more of vegetables and fruits for our health. If we follow, if people are aware, if they connect this, in fact, if they are even aware of what their religion really teaches in terms of their health and the environment, taking care of the planet, our earth, our environment, as well as our health and our body, if people are really aware, then it will be easier for people to eat healthy and to heal our body and both our planet, to heal both, you know. So this is, I feel, the most missing thing is the linkage, the awareness, the information, you know. So I feel we need to build, we work with the imams, the faith leaders. And when the faith leaders are speaking, when you use, you know, it's as Dariel said, it's always very important to blend science and faith for those who are believers, yeah? Because when you are talking to the followers of a certain religion or faith people, so you are speaking to their heart, and it's easy to influence them. And if you use their text, you know, it's something they relate with, and if it's from their text, they believe in that text, and it's easier to influence them. And then if you link it with science, and that science doesn't disagree with religion, with the teachings in the Quran. So if you know, that linkage, that awareness is very important. So mostly the problem we have in where the area I come from is, you know, like the imams, the faith leaders talk of more of other things like fasting, prayer, and this and that, other than like the health of the human, healing the earth and healing the planet. They don't even, some of them are not even aware. So awareness is a major thing for me. And so relating the two, blending the two is also very important when we communicate with.
I think the word right now is blend. So we'll blend in with Buddhism in action right now with Dr. Ming. If you are there, let's see, you have a picture with some broccoli. I hope you are eating a broccoli right now. But let's see. Yes, Dr. Ming, let us know, please. So in 2 minutes, how does Buddhism in action come into play for shifting patterns of consumption? And with what you heard as well with, for example, Christianity, Islam, now we'll go with Buddhism. So what does Buddhism in action mean in food?
Subsidies Foundation is a charity foundation. The founder is a nun, Master Zhen Yan. And then 慈济 in Chinese means compassion and relief. So we have, this is a Buddhist foundation. And then because that for Buddhists, Tzu Chi is that compassion and relief, help the people and the sentinel beings with compassion. And then like in our healthcare system is helping people, and but not only to the people, but also do no harm to the earth. And the healthcare sectors, when we want to treat the patient, we use a lot of natural resources and generate toxic waste. So as a healthcare professional, we need only to treat the patient, but also need to treat to protect the earth. So it is as a Buddhist, and then we want to help people and also help the sentient beings. But when we are doing the treatment, maybe we have to also do something to protect the environment. So not only the people, but also the planets. And then I think that almost all the religions are all, almost all the religions are based on love the people and love the environment we live. So I think that eating mostly plant-based diet, I'm sure to you that according to all the other evidence and also our studies, that will be very helpful for your earth. And now we know that it also very helpful for the environment. So there is a saying said, you can change the world with every bite. So the daily practice, from our daily practice, from our food, we can, this is action and simple action. It can be done by every person, that we can help our health and also help our earth.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ming. And you mentioned that people do no harm. That is what we should be aiming, and sometimes it's not necessarily the case. We are now entered this antropoceno in Spanish, and it's people fueling that up as well. And with what you mentioned, I wanted to ask Olaf, with people do no harm and the conception that we have of humanity, right? That we were talking about this before, and somewhere humanity got twisted in actually harming, right? And maybe I'd love to get your sense of what should we be expecting after these conversations, after these dialogues, after this summit, which is man-made, right? In the future of it. And for this, I also want to ask, for example, in another perspective, is this kind of like the Paris Agreement of food? I mean, are we putting specific boundaries in order to make these lasting change for humanity to keep on striving and in our day-to-day, and also with our spiritual connection?
Thank you. I'll actually start there where you ended, Bibi, with the spiritual connection, because when we talk about food, think about food in our day-to-day lives, we rarely reflect on what it actually is, right? Food is what we do to all the life forms that we are surrounded by, whether it's from the plant kingdom or the animal kingdom. It's the web of life that we extract from to make food. And I think there's something very fundamentally important in bringing that into our view as humanity, as we think about our food future. And in some ways, and I'll speak now like Dariel did, based in the Christian tradition. Every single Sunday, Christians all over the world go to church, and there's the Eucharist, which is basically commemorating the Last Supper before the suffering and death of Christ, when he basically told his disciples to eat bread and drink wine, and he said, "This is my body, this is my blood." And I think one way of reinterpreting the significance of that story is that food, whether it's bread or wine or anything else we eat, is actually life in a variety of forms that we turn into food. And what he's saying is that when you eat and drink anything, you're basically in touch with God, and you are that God cares about, and God is infused in that and is part of that, and we should have humility and respect for the web of life. That's not normally what you hear in church, but I think there's something very important there. And then that brings me to the Food System Summit, and I do think we need a equivalent of a Paris Agreement for food. It's not going to happen at this summit, because this summit is really about mobilizing humanity around building that new narrative that we need, and bring the solutions to the table that can allow us to act. And I think the moment when you might have an actual Paris Agreement on food will come later, and hopefully that will happen. But this is about setting the stage. This is about inviting everyone to the table. Come with your ideas, come with your solutions, and let's build coalitions that are committed to act, to put them into action, whether they are governments or from the private sector, or people in their day-to-day lives, civil society organizations, communities. Let's empower, let's hear from the indigenous communities with all their wisdom to help us solve our problems. Let's listen to the faith traditions, what they have to offer, etc., etc. That's what this summit is really about. But I think we need to rekindle and reawaken that fundamental humility and for want of a better term, kind of thankfulness to the web of life that allows us to sustain ourselves. And that's where we have to kind of really look ourselves in the mirror and ask ourselves some questions. Are we with our day-to-day actions when it comes to food honoring the web of life, and with that also honoring ourselves in terms of, as Dariel was talking about, our potential as human beings to be the best we can be.
Thank you. And Olav, I'll ask you a bit just about that food honoring, right? And you mentioned about mobilizing humanity. Basically, this is life. In 2 words, how would you suggest or orient better for political parties, for the food industry, and to consumers in general, 2 words for them to honor the food better, for these changes to happen?
That's I think that brings me back to what we already talked about, and it has to do with the necessary shift to a plant-rich, diverse future, where we and where we bring justice into the food system. And the food system lacks fundamental justice as kind of part of its fabric, right? It's set up to make money for the few on the backs of the many, and it doesn't.
Oh, Olaf, you're breaking.
Sorry. I see my internet connection is a bit unstable for some reason. I don't know why. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. But all right. So to tell everyone they should change to plant-based diet. And also I wanna go into Mona to rapidly tell us in 1 minute. What is your call to action for the audience here today, within your beliefs, your spirituality, you as a wise grandmother and keeper of traditions as well? What would be your call to action for the audience here today in order to shift our consumption patterns to more sustainable and regenerative, healthy lifestyles? In 1 minute. Let's unmute your mic.
So one of the things that I think is really important is to celebrate the gift of life that comes from the food that we have, and a spiritual connection with it that involves, a prayer of gratitude, a thought of gratitude, and even when you consume it, that gratitude, and that's what we call having a sacred relationship with it. And in doing that, and we demonstrate that to our children, our grandchildren, then that strengthens that connection and that sacred spiritual nutrition that we all need. And so I believe that, we do ceremonies, we make offerings, we sing, we dance, there's all of these ceremonial, or some people call ritual, to establish that connection with that food in how we take care of it and how we consume it. Even preparation of the food, maybe you don't take it out of your garden, but you bring it into your home, and how you prepare it. My mother told me that when you prepare food, you must do it with love, and how you prepare it, with how you're thinking, how you're feeling. You're putting that into the food so that the people who are going to consume it are going to, we say, be blessed, and they're going to be nourished physically.
And Mona,
mentally,
you are hitting really exactly what Karena is asking on the chat. I don't know if you saw it, but I just it's all aligned. Karena was actually asking about, before you mentioned harvest celebration, you mentioned it now again, a celebration. So she asked, are there other ways that ritual and ceremony help maintain the cultural connection to food?
I believe so, and I believe that it's not something that only Indigenous people can do. I think it's part of our. Hey, we celebrate Thanksgiving, right? We should do it every day. Giving thanks. I know in Christian practices, there's the grace. You say grace over your food. We do what we call a food offering. We take a little bit of the food before we eat it, and we make an offering back to Mother Earth, or also to our ancestors. And that's how we continue to maintain this very special and spiritual relationship. And I believe the important part is that our children, the younger generations they embrace it. And that's why I really support doing a gardens within the schools to do that, as well as in the tribal communities. That's what's happening now today with their traditional plant foods. So that's what they're doing in the community. It's intergenerational. It's
and
important.
exactly with that intergenerational, we have now a comment from the chat that millennials have disconnected a bit from that spiritual perspective. To all the panelists or whoever would like to answer, what do you think the future, who is the future of food? And I'll go with this with Najat.
Yes, Bibi, kindly repeat the question. I was answering a question on the chat.
No worries.
So-
Who or anyone can jump in. Who is the future of food?
Yep, I can say communities, the small scale farmers, the women, the girls, because yeah, you know, the grassroots communities, those who really produce at the ground. So if they produce organically, and we get organic food, it help us in consuming healthy food, yeah. But then others also play a lot of role. So I hope.
So basically, everyone, right?
Everyone, yeah.
Everyone, including the food itself, is the food is the gift. The food is I mean, we have to participate in assuring that the food continues, the plant life is healthy and nutritious for us. The earth is healthy, and it's this whole cycle. It's not, we can't separate it. We as human beings, we're the weak ones. We don't have that power. It's all of this nature that is part of us. And we must recognize that and embrace that. That's what I believe anyway.
Thank you, Mona. Dr. Ming says in the chat that we are the future if we take action. Dr. Ming. Dariel, a last few words before we close out?
Yeah, I think the future of food belongs to the masses, but I think if the masses are not critically engaged and thinking about it critically, it'll be somewhat of a if I merge a little Bible, it'd be somewhat of a similar story to the Israelites in what Joseph did to the Egyptians. And so Joseph kind of enslaves the mass of the Egyptians, and they, instead of, it's a famine, and so there's food scarcity, and so the masses kind of happily become servants to the few elites, so that they can get bread. And so I think there's a real danger that could happen in our society if food production and distribution is only kind of owned by a small portion of the population, and that the masses at large are unaware, uneducated, uninformed about what's happening. We'll just be begging for bread, and we'll do whatever to get it.
Thank you. Well, as a wrap up, and something that I got from our pre-call, maybe not so much today, but that's why I want to emphasize it. Women in leadership positions, especially in food and climate areas, that is a great way to have a future, right? If we want to make this more sustainable. So yeah, look up who's there in those places, and also understand what today we've been hearing about those connections with spirituality, with humanity and the earth, and what we put in our mouth and in our bodies. You know, we say that our bodies are sacred, and we hold these two very holy perspectives of you know, faith and religion, but we also have very holy perspectives of food. They're very sacred to our lives and in our priorities. So really, thank you for this conversation today, for them to be blended. And I'll turn it over to Andrew. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And thank you to those who participated in the chat, and to all of our distinguished speakers. This was an incredibly fortifying conversation for me. And just to think about that word of blending very much came up. And I think that is something that, as we look to the future, what concessions do we need to take in our own lives? Where do we have to change and shift, and how do we blend into this new way of being? And so I just want to say thank you to everyone for bringing their perspectives, their full selves into this. I think, as Mona said, this is all interconnected, and this is beyond just a simple question of consumption. It's a question of who we are, how we exist in the earth and with one another, and how we do that in a way that is accessible and equitable and just, not just for the people, but for the planet as well. There's no us without it. And so I just want to say thank you again. Enjoy the rest of your days, whether it's morning or evening or in the middle. I hope you have some good food today, that you say thank you to it and the earth, and to the workers whose hands prepared it for you, and that we can continue this conversation in the days that come. So thank you. And oh, I didn't say, but sign up for the next one. I'll send out an email to everybody. Would love to have you join us for our next conversation next Thursday, 11. So long, friends.
Bye, thank you.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye.